We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 11:02, and I want to make sure that we maximize all of our time together today. So I am Dr. Nika White, your host of Intentional Conversations, a virtual community chat that we host every Friday from 11 to 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. But what I'm always very excited about is that we have people that are joining from all over the globe. And yes, I do say globe, and so that always makes me happy. So do let us know where you're joining from. I'm going to go ahead and get us started, and I am supported today by Natasha Porviskova, as well as Elvia Pacheco, two members of my team who serve as DEI managers. And by the way, shout out to both of them because October 1st, just yesterday, was their first day as full-time employees with Nika White Consulting, and I am super excited to have them on the team. And so thank you, both Natasha and Elvia, for supporting today and being a part of the Nika White Consulting team. So if you go to the next slide for me, please, Natasha. I'm going to do what we normally do and just take you through a couple quick high-level bits of information that I want you to have top of mind. While this is an hour, we don't want the conversations to end after this particular event and session ends. And so I want to continue the conversations, and I invite you all to follow me on the social platforms that I am involved in. You'll see Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please do connect with me there. Next slide. I also like to encourage you to visit my website, which is simply nikawhite.com, nikawhite.com. And the reason that I encourage you to visit my website is because there are a number of complimentary resources for people that are looking to increase their leadership around leading inclusively. And so if you are on this journey right now of self-education around equity, inclusion, diversity, then there are white papers, blog articles. I do short video clips every single week that's released. They're called Inclusion Uncomplicated. It's all about simplifying DEI, and that's just available to you on my website. So take advantage of those resources. I also like to give an opportunity to let you know what's coming ahead in Intentional Conversations. And so next week, I am so excited to welcome guest co-host Sean Wanzo. And we're going to be talking a lot about balancing social justice with the business side of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and lots of other topics. And so please join us back here next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go ahead and register for that. Registration is open now, and you will also receive an email today with information for you to directly go ahead and register. So go to the next slide. I think I also have some information for the guest co-host that's going to follow Sean. I do, and it's my friend Jessica Sharp. I'm so excited to have Jessica join. And Jessica's doing some amazing work right now. And so we're going to be covering the topics of empathy, belonging, emotional intelligence, equity, unconscious bias, or as I like to refer to it as conscious inclusion. So I look forward to having Jessica Sharp join us on October 16th. Next slide, please. And you all have been fantastic in providing us with wonderful recommendations of guest co-hosts. And so do not keep that great information to yourself. Please share with us. You can do so by sending an email to us, and you can send it to Natasha, Natasha at nikawhite.com. Natasha oversees inviting all of our guests and making sure that they're well prepared to share with this community. And so we want to hear your recommendations, and we thank you in advance for sending those along. So now let's get to the point of why we are here today. Again, some of you are repeat attendees, and I am so grateful for that. But some of you may be new attending for the first time. So I want to just share what this is about. Well, let's go to the next slide. This is an opportunity for each of you to partner with me to help ensure that our time together is really optimized. So what I'm going to do now is just share a couple high-level considerations for us each to keep top of mind as we manage our time together today. So the first is, you can go to the next slide, Natasha, is that we are here to learn with and from each other. And so this is a community. I invite you to use the chat feature. I invite you to put your questions into the stage area as we are communicating with each other. We're going to bring that into the conversation and make sure your questions are answered. Although the topics vary from week to week based upon who we have as our guest co-host, what really is the thread among each of these intentional conversation weekly sessions is that we intersect diversity, equity, and inclusion with leadership and business. So today is going to be no different than that. We also are always very top of mind on what's happening in the media and in the news, what's been really reflecting on people's minds throughout the week. And there's certainly some things that are going to surface in the conversation from events this week, but we are very top of mind that we're still navigating this global pandemic, that we are in the midst of so much greater conversation and attention to the racial inequity crisis that we're dealing with. And so I'm sure that's going to find its way into our topic. But this is an opportunity for us to provide a pathway to dynamic knowledge as we learn with and from each other. So I want you to certainly feel the spirit of that as you also have some thoughts and resources that you would like to share. We will be recording this session. It's on live right now and it's being recorded. And so we're going to share out with you this afternoon the replay for you to share with others in your network. Maybe you didn't get a chance to capture all of the thoughts and you want to go back and take some notes. We do encourage that. You'll also receive a transcript of the chat room. So the resources that are shared there will also find its way into your resources going forward. So with that in mind, I am so excited to introduce a new friend, Katie Martell, and I want to give her a proper introduction. And I have to say, this is not going to feel like a proper introduction, only because she gave us just snippets of really who she is. And so maybe that was intentional, I don't know, but I'm going to probe a little bit further. I'm going to have her to tell us her story beyond what's on paper here that I will read. But I'm just so delighted to have Katie as my guest co-host today. So Katie is an unapologetic marketing truth teller. These are her words. And the creator of Woke Wash. And we're going to talk all about what that is. A forthcoming book and documentary exploring the collision of marketing and social movements. And that's all she gave me. That's it. That's completely it. So I'm going to call her out on it. And I'm going to have her to now come forward and to greet this audience in her own way. But then the next question, Katie, is, tell us your story. Give us more. We want to know more. Welcome, Katie.
Hi. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much. First and foremost, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Your past guests have been incredible. Your future guests are incredible. So the bar is like out of frame. I hope I meet it. Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone, for joining. It's Friday. You could be doing anything but this. And the fact that you're being here and you're intentionally being here, pun, is meaningful. We have to keep, these conversations going. And thank you, Dr. White, which is the only time I get to call you that this whole broadcast, for putting these together and the team behind it. Thank you.
So tell us your story. Yeah, what else can you tell us about who you are and how you arrived at this place to where you're the unapologetic marketing truth teller?
That was a nickname given to me by a colleague back in 2016 when I first became independent. I started to write around that time, just on LinkedIn, just like a passion. You get angry. Some people go text their best friend. I write long form articles on LinkedIn. That's like my therapy and my outlet. So I wrote in 2016 about this trend of femvertising, advertising using the ideals of feminism. I remember I had seen a few ads on TV. It was late night. I was on my couch. I honestly, as a marketer and a consumer, just started seeing these ads, and I just started to Google the behaviors of the companies behind the ads that were increasingly feminist. And I remember seeing a disconnect, right? I remember seeing a dissonance, and I remember thinking, this is a problem. I started to write about it. I started to write more about it, research it, talk to people. And 5 years later-ish, it has become a passion project. I'm now working on a documentary and a book essentially about the collision of social movements and marketing as an industry. And my background, I've got about 12 years of experience in marketing, but specifically in marketing to other marketers. I've actually been on the vendor side and the services side of agencies and marketing technology vendors. And so I've been marketing to my colleagues and my peers, and it's just kind of been immersed, right, in this world of marketing. So I like to say that I'm a student of it, I'm a critic of it, I'm a practitioner of it. And now today I'm lucky and fortunate to be entirely independent still, and I get to speak a lot about it. And so the nickname came from a place of being willing to kind of call out what I call exceptional truths in the industry, but not for the purpose of shaming anyone, just to move the industry forward as it continues, to evolve. And shout out to Boston, my Boston friends. Anyone else here from Boston?
If you're from Boston, certainly make sure that you let us know that in the chat. I'm sure Katie would certainly appreciate that, as well as my colleague Natasha, who's now in the Boston area too. So, okay, so we're going to get a little bit deep into this Woke Wash, film, documentary, and even just the construct of what that means, so that we can help educate this audience. But before we do so, I always like to bring in really relevant events that people have a lot of passion and energy about based upon what's been in the news for the week. And so I have to begin with just a couple quick questions. Let's just go ahead and bring the elephant into the room. Did you watch the debate?
I only lasted 13 minutes. I lasted 13 minutes. And I'm not proud of that. I don't want to kick this off on a negative note here, but my goodness, if we can't debate and get into the nuances of these complicated issues, then what is the role of a debate in the first place? I can't help but feel like that was potentially the intended impact of such chaos and such divisive rhetoric on stage. And it wasn't even a conversation, it was just yelling, which made a lot of people like me who, I mean, think about it. I'm an engaged citizen. I like to keep up with the news. I'm constantly trying to seek out what's going on at a deeper level beyond the headlines. Even I couldn't handle the onslaught, right, of that dynamic. I think that was part of it. Let's shield from the issues, and the headlines the next day will also shield from those issues. What did you think?
Oh, well, I did watch the whole thing, and I have to say that I watched the whole thing because I was hopeful that it was going to get better, right? and my husband was next to me as well, and he was yelling the whole time, and I don't think that he would have let us turn from it regardless. But I think so many people walked away feeling unfulfilled on many different levels. And, I'm just, I have no words. I have no words. I'm deeply concerned. And, but I will say this, I am just as passionate about continuing to communicate the need for all of us to get out and vote. I don't care how you felt about where we landed with who said what or who didn't say what they should have said. At the end of the day, we need to vote. And that's what's important right now. We have, only a few weeks left to that very important date. And my message right now is, regardless of what you heard, how you felt, just vote. Just vote.
I think I'd love to just jump on that. One of the biggest opportunities, as I see it, is to not essentially, it's one thing to go and try to convince a Trump supporter to vote the other way, or to convince a Biden supporter to vote Trump. That's actually a very difficult thing to do, is to get someone out of a very entrenched place. The opportunity, and this is for every single person on this, I don't care who you are, how much influence you have in the world. We all know people who didn't vote in 2016, and the amount of registered, vote people that could have voted in 2016 who chose not to, the numbers were staggering. I think the pie chart is like half, right? Yeah, Natasha's like vote. Get someone who didn't see the consequence of the 2016 election to recognize the consequence of 2020. You had a sitting president on stage who would not renounce white supremacy. That is consequential. And we have to get one person who didn't vote in 2016. If you can get them to vote now, that's how we're going to turn the tide either direction. I truly believe that getting the person who politics doesn't affect me to realize the impact of their vote on somebody else, that is going to get people hopefully to the polls or to fill out the absentee ballot. What other year have you felt such an election with such consequences? I don't remember feeling like this ever, having this much gravity in one vote.
Right. Never in my life. And I'm even saying that with the year that there was so much, excitement around this historical moment where, of course, Barack Obama was to be president. But this, I feel even more compelled right now, and that's an interesting juxtaposition from before. So anyway, yes, vote. I think we're getting a lot of affirmation in the chat room around the importance of voting. So I want to stay here just for a brief moment, because this morning I woke up to the news that President Trump and Melania they tested positive for COVID. What are your reactions to that?
My mother said, if you can't say anything nice, say nothing at all. And so all I'll say is wear a mask, wash your hands, vote. And some people, I think, don't pay attention to an issue until it affects them, and they don't take it seriously until it affects them. As much as I believe in empathy and believe that people are driven by, wanting to help others, at the end of the day, we are human, and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is real. We are deeply entrenched in keeping ourselves alive. And so I don't know if this event, and hopefully, God willing, everyone's fine, I don't know if it's going to actually change people's minds, but I hope it convinces like one more person to wear a mask, right? If there's any silver lining to this, my God, let it be somebody realizing this is actually serious versus the misinformation that the same administration was putting out against the severity of the disease. But I won't say what everyone is saying, you know, I hope he dies and this and that. That kind of discourse serves nobody. Nobody.
I totally agree. You don't want anyone to suffer at the hands of any type of illness that can reach our doorstep any day. But to your point, I am curious as to whether or not there are some people now that are thinking differently about how do we exercise precaution to make sure we're protecting ourselves and others, particularly others that are much more vulnerable than maybe we could be. So okay, we're going to move off of that, but I had to bring in again some of the latest news. I always think that's appropriate because whether or not we were to ask it, you're thinking it and I know it, so we're going to bring it into the conversation. So let's go back now to wolf wash. I want you to tell this audience how in which you define what that is exactly.
Well, I'd love first if I could ask a bit of a poll of people in the chat. Is anyone here in marketing? Does anyone on this call work in a marketing function in a business? If so, let me know. I'd love to know who I'm chatting with, because I'm a marketer who's used to chatting with marketers. I'm deeply both kind of passionate about what I do, but also very much a skeptic of it, which I think is important, right? To keep us honest as an industry, keep us moving forward. So if you're in marketing, can you let us know? I would love to know if anyone here is doing the work. But
and make sure you're using the stage area, not the event area. But yeah, I think this is how you and I connected too. We bonded in that first conversation because I'm like, this is my background, and so we were kind of speaking the same language. But yes.
I think marketing itself as a skill, like communications, is honestly the foundation of everything. When are you not trying to sell something to someone? When are you not trying to persuade someone internally, externally, whenever to do something? I'm very grateful. Natasha's marketing gone to EI. Yeah, I see a lot of people making that jump actually from marketing into, an HR function like employer branding. Yeah.
Oh, and we're going to get to the question that I just asked you because it's so important, and we're probably going to spend a bit of time there on this whole wolf wash. But I have to say, while we're talking about this marketing thing, I agree with you, Katie. And in fact, I believe that one of the reasons that I have been successful to some degree in my ability to help clients solve for diversity, equity, and inclusion is because I bring those skill sets of marketing communication. As we're solving for DEI, it's not just about helping people to understand the constructs of DEI in theory and in practice, but it's also about framing, positioning, educating. And so marketing rocks. I love that field, that industry, and it's incredibly powerful and important. So yes, all hail marketing.
Well, don't hail it, and don't think of it as a savior, because as much as I call it the world's most powerful industry, because it is. It's absolutely pervasive. It's all around us, and it has been for years. In the age of digital marketing, it truly is inescapable, and it truly intersects our lives in places that are designed to feel relevant and to feel part of our everyday experience. Every app you use, everywhere you go. There are some old numbers. I'll say old, like 5 years, 10 years ago, but marketing changes so quickly that they're old. That say that we're exposed to anywhere between 3,000 and 10,000 marketing messages a day, like in one day. We take it for granted. A lot of people who don't work in marketing, or even those of us that do, we just kind of take marketing at face value, right? We're like, okay, it's there, it's harmless. It doesn't affect me. I have this, and we know this in the industry. If you ask a marketer, does marketing matter? Does it have impact? The answer is a resounding yes. We all know it does. Look at the great branding that you have. And I think one of your partners is on the Amy.
Yeah,
if you
okay, so I have to, Katie. I have to give a shout out now to Amy Pecoraro. She is the owner of Peculiar, a woman-owned full-service marketing communications firm, and they kick butt. I have been connected to that firm for a long time now, and I just so appreciate their partnership. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Yes, so thank you, Amy.
It's great work. It's great work. When I got the email to come on, I admittedly didn't know who you were, but one look at the website, one look at the material, I said, oh, she's legit. She knows what she's talking about. Like, branding matters. We all have a personal brand, but it's one of those things that we take for granted of how powerful it is. So any marketer will tell you what we do matters. It grows businesses. It takes I work in startups, right? So it takes unknown companies to a market leader position. It's very persuasive. It's everywhere. We, as a collective, no longer marketers, but consumers and engaged employees, we have to take it more seriously. We have to be more literate in not the persuasion and the tricks of the trade, but rather the impact of what we do. So that's just how I've always felt that way. But about, I want to say in college, actually, a long time ago, I saw this documentary, right? I watched this film from Jean Kilbourne. And if you know who she is, you're probably going, I love Jean Kilbourne, because Jean Kilbourne is incredible. She was one of the first, actually probably the first the first individual to look at the impact of advertising on women. Specifically, in the 60s, the late 60s, she started to cut out, ads from magazines. And I have a magazine, I have a Life from 1964. So like it would have been an ad like this with Jackie O on the cover. I got this at an antique store recently and I just love it. But, she would flip through and she would just find, these old vintage ads and she'd cut them out, put them on her fridge. And all of them just featured women. They featured them in all kinds of, demoralizing, dehumanizing, objectified positions, as advertising does. And she collected and built the first body of work that's now actually being archived at Duke of advertising featuring women. And it was this incredible pattern recognition project where she just looked at how women were portrayed, what they were expected to be. And she just simply reported back on what she saw and noticed these patterns. She found, of course, a correlation between these types of ads and negative body image, issues and sexual violence against women and a culture of violence against women and all kinds of other issues. She also studied tobacco advertising, the sexualization of children. I mean, all kinds of ways in which advertising intersects with what I call real life, right? And so I saw Jean's documentary. It's called Killing Us Softly. And I'm actually going to drop a link to the trailer in the chat. And I'd love if everyone could just take 5 minutes later on today and watch it. Have you seen this, by the way?
I don't think I have. I'm so intrigued, though. I'm definitely going to make sure that, definitely share that link. That's awesome. Okay.
It's going to show, and all it is a lecture. It's Jean lecturing to students about the pattern she saw with advertising's treatment of women. This documentary has been viewed by millions of people, and it absolutely was shown at every single, I saw it in gender studies class in 2006. But it always stayed in the back of my head. It's like this little voice on my shoulder saying, advertising has impact. And what Jean says is, advertising creates normalcy. It helps us understand the world around us. It creates our perception of what normal is, what good is. It helps us figure out who we want to be. It's designed to give you an aspirational state of being. Of course, it gets into your psyche. We are all impacted by advertising. So, inspired by Jean Kilbourne, who I have had the pleasure of meeting and actually interviewing for my film. In fact, she came over last week for like drinks with my wife. It's amazing to me to sit down with one of your idols and just be friends with her. But she inspired me to continue that conversation, basically to ask the question, well, we know the impact of advertising on women. We know the negative impacts. What's the impact of advertising on social movements? Because now we live in a world of what I call woke washed marketing. We live in a world where a brand is having something to say about the Black Lives Matter protest and Pride Month and International Women's Day and Black History Month and environment. The world
right now.
And it's really fascinating to be watching from the perspective of somebody who has Jean Kilbourne in the back of my head asking, what is the impact? And that is what I hope to do with this film and this book. It literally just started as me ranting on the internet. It evolved into speaking. That speaking turned into a realization that more people need to understand that the worlds of advertising and marketing, including, PR, events, all of it, are starting to collide with social movements. And we don't really have rules for this moment. We're kind of making it up as we go. And we're seeing a lot of examples of good, bad, ugly. We really don't know the impact of what we're doing. So that's what I'm trying to do. It's a documentary, true and true. It's got interviews with all kinds of people. It's got a lot of examples of ads. And I have a take on the fact that I think that there's a great opportunity for business here, but there's a lot of danger as well if a lot of co-opting and exploitation continues.
I love that, Katie. And I love that someone is thinking along those lines, because you're right. I think that right now, a lot of brands they have this knee-jerk reaction to what's happening, and they are responding in ways that they think people want to see. But quite honestly, they're being very critical these days. They are scrutinizing these messages, and they want to know, do your actions align with your words? And so performative allyship has certainly been a conversation that has surfaced in the midst of all of these brands trying to position themselves on the side of what they feel like people want to hear, but are they really following that through? And so talk about that from the perspective of the performative allyship that is really dangerous as well, and how that could be negatively impacting brands who are leveraging, again, their messages of social impact to be seen as on the right side of things. How that could be really an implication to performative allyship, could be an implication to having an adverse effect.
It has a few risks. I've got 7 because I'm in marketing, and so I know how to break things up into listicles. But before I tell you mine, can I hear yours? How do you define performative allyship when it comes to social media or an ad campaign?
No, so I love how you're turning the table, but
Sorry, I had to.
no, you're fine. I was prepared for this because you told me she was going to turn the table. Well, to me, performative allyship exists across individuals and organizations, and I think it's where, again, you aren't really aligning the actions with the words, and I think that is so critical these days because it puts us in a posture where maybe we aren't willing to do the hard work, and that's what I'm mostly concerned about. I'm not one of those that is, participating in this council culture, because I think that is also creating challenges, because we need everyone to be engaged so that we all can emerge stronger. So regardless of when you've entered into this conversation, I'm not going to judge you or to condemn you. What I want to do is help support you to get it right? That's my mentality. That's me. And I know some other practitioners do not necessarily agree with that, but I do. And so in that regard, if I see someone that's operating whereby it's just performative, it's just to be perceived as being on the right side of things, I am questioning and really respectfully challenging them to take that a step further. Allyship is all about action at the bare minimum. So it's not just about a statement of support of something. It is, how are you demonstrating support of that in meaningful, useful ways? And you don't know if it's meaningful and useful until you do the hard work of really self-educating yourself to get proximate to the issues of those in which you're allying for, to understand their pain points, their challenges, and to put a plan in place where you're holding yourselves and your organizations accountable for it. And so that's how I define performative allyship. And I think that some of the efforts that I've seen so far, like the statues and like some of the other nuance that I've heard, like NFL, playing the Black anthem. I mean, I think that those things help to create an opportunity for people to be focused on, okay, there is some level of support and there's acknowledgement of what's happening. And that's feel good for people. But then that doesn't last but so long. Again, you have to do the hard work. So you got me on a soapbox, but I'm going to stop now.
This is your world, and this is where my world and your world intersect. And this is why I think it's so fascinating, and why I'm so grateful to have your voice in this, because I come at this from a marketing perspective. I know, and so do you, why companies want to be part of a social movement. I mean, really, let's take a step back, right? Because there's a I think empathy for the marketer. There's an empathy for these brands, these big faceless corporations. There are still people like me, like people on this call, behind the scenes making a decision, signing off on these campaigns. Why do they do it? Why does State Street, for example, State Street Global Advisors, why do they need to put out Fearless Girl? Is that the statue you were referencing, maybe?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Well, there's several of them. There are plenty of even institutions that are now renaming buildings, and they're tearing down statues, replacing it with something different. So it's a multitude of all those examples.
And I think Fearless Girl is probably the best known example. This came out in 2017, 2016, one of those years I started was ranting on the internet.
And it came out retweeting it, saying yes. I mean, I loved it, but then then I had to ponder and think, okay, so this is great, but now what? Anyway.
And should they have even done that? I mean, think about, so what was happening there is that State Street Global Advisors, which is a different, different than State Street, but related, actually paid, they were trying to raise funds for, trying to celebrate the power of women in leadership, because they had a new female-focused investment fund that they were going to be doing. It was really a very campaign-driven, launch-driven decision. And so they commissioned this Fearless Girl, right? Standing down Wall Street's Raging Bull. And who wouldn't want to share that? I mean, that made international headlines because of the tensions arising. Don't forget Hillary and Trump. There were a lot of talk about women's issues. It was the global zeitgeist. It was the narrative. It was what everyone was talking about. And so it was brilliant marketing. Yeah. The phrase is, how do we be part of the conversation? How do we be part of the conversation? So they commissioned the statue. Great. It goes absolutely viral. It was one of the best performing campaigns. I actually booked one of the guys who did the campaign to speak at an event I was curating speakers for. It was one of those campaigns that marketers love to talk about because it's so impactful. All right, behind the scenes, and I Googled this, literally just me on Google, not an investigative journalist. It was that same year, State Street agreed to pay $5 million to settle allegations that it paid female and Black executives at the firm less than their white male counterparts. And at the time, they had a leadership team that was 82% male and nearly entirely white. So State Street's actions weren't exactly lining up to, right, this campaign, but who knew? Nobody. Who knew? Unless you were looking for it, you didn't know. So we have to ask, what is the impact of this performative allyship, this campaign that was an investment of millions of dollars that probably could have been spent on its own employees, right, where it actually would have made a difference? I believe, and I have a million examples of these, by the way, this disconnect between words and action. I think the impact is serious. I think one of the impacts is that it creates an illusion of progress. You mentioned the word perception. Perception is reality. Marketers know this. We know that people don't have time to go investigate every company they do business with to the level of the makeup of the exact team, or whether or not they have internal employee pay issues for minority employees. We don't know. We don't have time for that. So marketing does that job for you. It tells you exactly what to think about a brand. To me, that creates this illusion in which people that consume these campaigns believe the world to be more equitable than it really is. It's an illusion of progress. I like to, again, like Jean Kilbourne, I'm going to draw some correlations here. So I don't have studies to prove this, but I can absolutely guess that this is part of the reason that Time Magazine found that like half of men, 49% of men, don't believe in a gender pay gap. They don't believe it's real. Forget how to fix it. They don't believe it's real. It's like Santa Claus. Apparently it needs their belief to be true. Ad campaigns like this make the world seem like it's far more equitable than it really is. And we cannot solve problems that we don't see or understand clearly. That does more harm than good, in my opinion.
I love that. It reminds me of what Brian Stevenson talks about. And he's the author of Just Mercies, this acclaimed lawyer that really works for the condemned, the oppressed. But in his book, Just Mercy, which was also put to film, some of you may remember it, he talks about the ways in which to solve for racial inequities and inequalities is you have to get people proximate to the issues. And so I believe that the responsibility for us, knowing that brands are doing this because they do recognize the power of marketing communications, we have to be willing to do our own homework. I love the fact that you made it plain and clear. And you said, I'm not an investigative journalist, but I just Googled, and guess what I found out? And so I'm encouraging people that one way to hold organizations accountable is to do our own research. Don't just take it at face level from what they are communicating to us. And I'm seeing actually a trend of that. People are, again, they're scrutinizing these statements, these messages, and they want to know, okay, so now what? How are you backing this up? I often say that diversity is not just about the optics of age, race, and gender. It's much broader than that, many different layers, but you also have to attack the optics, because if you don't, then people are going to find it really hard to view you as credible as someone who is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion if there's no evidence of that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think what you allude to here is a real threat of mistrust. So I mentioned one of the issues facing brands was, think about it. Every brand, I don't care what industry you're in, there is a rise in commoditization and a rise of competition. So every brand is competing for share of mind, share of wallet, share of anything, because there's more competition than ever. That's just the age of, right, what the internet has allowed us to do. It's never been easier to start a company. So brands are kind of like always competing on different layers because they're trying to just get, one up. Otherwise, it becomes a price war. It's who's the cheapest. And brands, that's the death of a brand. That's how you lose growth and stall growth. Brands want to be connected with consumers on shared values because they know that shared values is an emotional driver for a purchase that earns loyalty, that kind of transcends logic even. We are emotional creatures. We will make a decision emotionally, justify it logically. So if you can get in with someone as a brand and say, we support whatever it is that you care about, whether it be Black Lives Matter, the environment, gay rights, you name it, they know that that's going to build trust. And it's a measure of differentiation and, to your point, earning trust. Now, there is a huge brand risk, one of the impacts of performative allyship, to being exposed. You mentioned cancel culture. Yes, cancel culture, I think bullying and ganging up on someone and creating this false narrative is dangerous. But cancel culture is great when it's calling out something that a brand was trying to hide. I'm going to give you an example. It was, do you know Sleeping Giants?
I can't say that I do, Katie. Tell us a little bit.
It was literally just two marketers. It was a product marketer and an ad guy. One of them is my good friend, Nandini Jammy, and she's now part of her own consultancy and has a great newsletter called Branded that I'll put a link to it in the chat after this. But basically what Sleeping Giants did was, Breitbart News, misinformation site, very misogynistic site, very, very much responsible for some of that legitimate fake news that was spread in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump win. Breitbart would be publishing this awful content, totally misogynistic headlines that would make anyone with decency go, oh my God, this is awful. But it was one of those websites that other major corporations' ads would appear on, because programmatic advertising allows you to basically put an ad on basically any website as long as it's on an approved list. Breitbart was on a list. And so it was funding itself and its operations, this is Steve Bannon's website, through these ads, largely unknown, unbeknownst to the companies that are serving them. I'm talking AT&T and Canada Tourism Board. We're talking legitimate companies who would never be caught dead advertising on this site. Sleeping Giants, all they were a Twitter account that started to take screenshots of these ads and say, at AT&T, just using social media to let the company know, hey, did you know that your ad dollars are funding this hate site? And one by one, to the tune of 4,000 plus companies took Breitbart off their list. Simple, just exclusion on their list, and they crippled 90% of Breitbart's revenue. That's cancel culture, technically, but what it is activism. It's people, ordinary people calling out brands to say, hey, we know you don't support these guys, so what your actions aren't aligning to the words. And you can have an impact too. There's a million different ways that you as a consumer can elevate these examples of dissonance that you find, the action versus the words. I also believe employees, and I'd love to hear your take on the rise of employee activism, employee-led, signing letters against, for example, I know Wayfair here in Boston led a walkout when it was discovered that they were selling beds to the detention centers in the border. Hundreds of employees here just walked out one day because they were protesting selling to ICE, which actually just happened recently with Hootsuite. What's your take on employee activism and its rise? I think it's like 4 out of 10 people right now come from this one.
Yeah, it's risky in so many regards for so many people, because I don't think that the majority of people operate within the workplaces with the high level of psychological safety, to be able to do things of that nature. And so therein lies part of the challenge as to why we don't see more employees, rallying around these types of coordinated efforts. But I love it. I think it really helps to place a level of greater responsibility and accountability on leaders who have maybe for quite some time felt as though maybe they were untouchable. And, because we sit up in this position of power and we are paying you and that's how you get your livelihood, then, we're going to tell you maybe that we really want to hear what you have to say. And you are important to us and we want to have these strong values. But so I really like that idea. And so there was another example that comes to mind. I believe it was Amazon. Wasn't it Amazon that recently got into a situation to where the employees kind of also rallied behind their thoughts? I can't remember. If someone recalls that, maybe put a link to the information in the chat. But I am seeing a trend of that as well.
Yeah, with Amazon. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
With Amazon, there was one where they were protesting the sale of facial recognition software to ICE. There was another recently about the treatment of warehouse workers. I think Amazon has an employee protest every 5 minutes, but they're so big that, it's hard. But it does have impact. What it does is raise essentially a PR nightmare and a crisis communications nightmare that the brand would rather avoid. And so there is power in speaking out. And I think that it, to your point, people who are not psychologically safe at work or otherwise safe at work tend to be marginalized employees. Those of us in the LGBTQ world, those of anyone, a person of color. So who should be protesting? Oh, it's anyone with the privilege to be able to leverage their talent. And what an opportunity! What an opportunity, right? To step up. You want to talk about allyship? Step up.
I appreciate saying that, Katie, because I often emphasize the significance and the power of people recognizing their sources of power and privilege and leveraging that for influence. And oftentimes those who have that are not the ones who are part of those marginalized, oppressed communities. And so, and I know that sometimes it lands on that population of people as, well, now all the onus is on me. But yeah, you're benefiting from these systems right now. So we do need for you to care about this in a way that helps, create greater equity across the board. I'm interested to hear, because you talked about part of this documentary is helping to put some rules around this,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I know that just in general, there certainly are false advertising, rules and regulations. And so how does what you're speaking of address the false advertising? What's the connection there, if at all? Because to me, it could be perceived as false advertising if somebody can do the homework and then figure out that this is totally against the message that you've sent out.
Yeah, it's so broad. It's so broad that these claims, I don't think would hold up. That is not a legal opinion, by the way, so nobody yell at me. But it's, to me, it's what are we actually looking at? What are we actually calling out? It's hypocritical behavior. Is it lying? I don't know. Is it, the rules the line isn't quite clear in terms of where we're putting the boundary between what's true and what's not. So for example, most of these campaigns have, these empty promises like we condemn or we stand with. And those are very intentionally chosen phrases because they don't insinuate any level of commitment. Therein lies the problem. They are legally probably safe, but what they really are is just an empty promise, very hollow, no meaningful action. So you'll see a lot of, if you went back and looked at all those statements that came out in June around from companies, the black background, the white font, and it was always like, we condemn, we stand with, like on the high horse, I'm like, oh, but it very much to me it's an empty promise. So, I mean, to me, that's the number one indicator of performative allyship. You're really not promising any legitimate support. It's also passing the blame. Holiday Phillips has a great article. I'm going to just link to it because I like to link to everything. You can tell. By the way, I have a newsletter. I'm just going to shout out because I love to include these types of stuff.
We love that. Share these resources, please. And by the way, as Katie continues to share, definitely feel free to place your questions into the stage area of chat. And Sean, I see your questions. We're going to get to them in just a moment. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Katie.
And Holiday Phillips, the article I just shared, has a beautiful definition of what performative allyship is that I want to read. It's basically what you said earlier. It refuses to acknowledge any personal responsibility for the systemic issues that provided the context for the relevant tragedy. It looks for a villain out there, like a crooked police officer in this case, or a heartless conservative. And it separates you, the good, from them, the bad. And that's to me that the number one core issue is if we're passing the blame as if to say we have no role in fixing the problem, we have no right to say that we're part of the solution. We have no right to put out a statement that says we support insert minority here, or run an ad campaign during the Super Bowl, or march employees in the Pride Parade if we're not willing to do the work internally. We started to talk about the risks earlier, but brand risk is one. We're going to be called out as hypocrites. Look at Pepsi with the Kendall Jenner campaign. Am I right? That was just so tone deaf. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Let's see. I can't say that I do. You have a link to that too, right? You're going to share?
Girl, I'm about to share some links. It is in the chat. It's this campaign where it was back it was 2017, but Kendall Jenner is like walking up to a line of police.
Yes.
With a Pepsi.
Yes. Yeah.
I consider that like the go-to hollow, empty promise campaign, but people will get called out for that. And people they have receipts. That's the thing, is they have receipts. L'Oreal issued a statement this past June. Did you see this? Where transgender. What's that?
I was talking about the one where they're bringing back. I can't recall her name, but it was
Monroe Bergdorf.
Yes. And they're bringing her back to, like, I guess, consult with them on DEI work, whereas before she was the one that had these significant complaints about the lack of commitment to inclusion and equity. Yeah.
Like 3 years prior, she had tweeted.
Yeah. So who's doing this work well?
Yeah, there's definitely not all bad in the world. I do. I'm not all shame and gloom and doom. Unfortunately, there are more examples of bad than good. One example is actually Rent the Runway. Are you familiar with that brand?
Oh, I'm definitely familiar with Rent the Runway. Yes.
Yeah. If anyone's not, they're in the world of fashion. You can basically rent these gorgeous dresses and outfits that you probably wouldn't be able to buy if you wanted to, but they are a beautiful, model. And CEO Jennifer Hyman put out a statement. She put out a statement like every CEO seemed to do after the protests became the global narrative and the global zeitgeist, right? And what I liked about Jennifer's statement was it matched all the criteria that you and I are now sharing about what performative allyship is not. The first thing she did was acknowledge that the industry she worked in was guilty of and this is her words, co-opting the style, inspiration, and ideas of Black culture without ensuring Black people are economically compensated. Right away, she called out the entire industry that she's in to say, look, we are part of the problem, right? And then she took responsibility. She said exactly what she and the company that she was at the helm of was going to do about it. She said the fashion industry must do better, and we at Rent the Runway are responsible for being part of the change. I was like, yes. And so then she made her stance very clear in the issue. You saw some statements that were like very wishy-washy. We condemn, the mistreatment, very vague words, again, probably to avoid legal risk. But Jennifer took this straight on and said, we believe that supporting Black business, and Black is capitalized, Black designers and Black talent is both in the fashion industry's moral and financial best interest. So there's a stand. There's an absolute line in the sand on where this company stands on the issue. And now what are they going to do about it? They provided clear actions that showed ownership. $1 million were dedicated through basically access to what their resources were. It wasn't just cash to a donation to the NAACP. It was design resources, data, mentorship, all to help Black designers launch collections on this platform, who she was saying typically have not had the investment capital to launch on their own. That's meaningful, right? Commitment. And then she aligned to the pledge, the 15% pledge that was made famous. It's all over Forbes. I'll include a link, by Aurora James. The 15% pledge basically says, look, we represent 15% of the country. We should represent 15% of your shelf space, meaning Black-owned, products. And so Jennifer committed to that 15% pledge. And the whole response was refreshing. It was direct. And it most importantly showed ownership and set a model and a precedent. Imagine if every organization out there, every brand realized that level of impact, if every single brand realized that they had a role to play in the solution. Imagine the difference versus this hemming and hawing over, is it political? Should we offend people? It's like, no, we are going to do the right thing and make a stand. That's what it's about. That's an opportunity for that brand to earn trust, to differentiate, and to build long-term value and long-term loyalty. And to me, it's not even controversial. Does that feel controversial to you? I don't think so.
I love that. I was a fan of Rent the Runway. Now I have to look up and check all your links out to be able to make sure I'm fully informed of that story, because I love it now. Yeah. So there is some good happening.
There are lots of good happening in the world, and I'm including both in my documentary. There's good and bad, not just all bad.
So I have a couple other questions, but I have to go to some of our audience questions right now. So Sean has been so patient. He has 2 questions. The first is, in your professional opinion, what kinds of DEI education trainings will best help the field and science of marketing? I think this is more appropriate. This is definitely appropriate for you, Katie. Take that.
Actually, I was going to ask you on that question. I very much defer to the experts on it. I think that marketers need more training, or at least more awareness and education than ever, because we sit at the seat of influence. We are able to influence culture. Marketing is not a reflection of culture. Marketing actively influences it. To say otherwise is to ignore the impact of marketing. So all I'll say about it is that it's probably more important for marketers to get it right than anyone else. No pressure.
Yeah. I don't know if I would separate the training specifically, because I think that regardless of what discipline you're in, having that foundational knowledge is critically important. In fact, I love when people on their own, regardless of their title, are infusing elements of DEI into their work. That's how it should be. Instead of this separate department and work, everyone should be owning that and leveraging those skill sets and that knowledge within the day-to-day work that they do. So I guess I have a little bit of a different opinion about that. And so let's see, Sean's another question is, what is your opinion on companies labeling diversity, equity, and inclusion work as political?
I think that political is almost this like word that carries a lot of weight, right? Like, oh, we don't want to get political. And that's what I was saying earlier at the very top of this call about people that think that they're not affected by politics. Politics is simply how we govern ourselves, and business and government are 2 major cultural institutions in our world. To suggest that they are somehow unrelated, that they don't affect each other, that there should be this church and state separation between business and government, is to ignore lobbying. It's to ignore the influence, right, of, actually, there's a great stat that I'm going to just dig up right now. There's something like 3 times the amount. It's in my, stay here, stay with me, wait for it. Here it is. The average consumer funds politicians and PACs 3 times more through their purchasing choices than through direct political contributions. And in this case, many corporations that publicly embrace Black Lives Matter gave a lot of money to politicians who were rated F by the NAACP. So yes, it probably is political because these two institutions are intertwined, whether or not we want to admit it. In fact, I think, and I'm not saying, Sean, this is at you, I think it's used as an excuse, like, oh, that's political, we don't want to go there, as if you have no ownership, again, in one of the systems that leads to the context of the oppression that we're talking about.
I could not have said that better. I totally agree with you. They are so interconnected, and I think it's a distraction. I think that when that comes into the conversation, is to provide this distraction to allow people permission to feel as though they can walk away from the hard work and keeping the main thing. So anyway, I'm totally with you on that. So those are all the questions I saw so far. But so what actions do you personally feel called to in this moment, Katie? I mean, obviously you're working on Woke Wash, and I think there's a lot of value to that, relevant to your way of activism. But are there any other specific ways in which you're feeling called to action during this moment?
I think that for me, it very much, I have I'll say luck, because I was starting to write about this since 2016, I gained a great following. And I'm not to say that to say I'm an influencer, but I do get paid for influencer work in the world of B2B, which is wonderful. I love that I have a platform to share, transformative stories of digital marketing. And I find that it's a, what's the word I want? I just feel very lucky and grateful that I have an opportunity. So yes, the film and the book are part of the kind of output of raising awareness about this issue, but I am constantly trying to elevate the voices of people like yourself, right? Who need a larger platform. You deserve 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. I may not, but I'm going to use what I do have as a means to elevate who I can. And I think every brand with any kind of following has that opportunity. The platform by itself is powerful. We know that, right? That's kind of what we use as an excuse to say, well, at least they're raising awareness of feminism. It's like, no. You have a platform to change society's opinions, but you do that through action. So I think if any brand is wondering, how do I leverage my platform in a way that's meaningful if my company isn't exactly living up to the values, elevate the voice of someone who is doing the work. Elevate the voice of people who don't have that platform. Bring them into the picture. There was a great campaign called Share the Mic that basically it was right in response to Black Lives Matter, and it allowed for like actresses. Did you see this? To kind of like let Black voices take over their Instas or their whatever it was, for like 24, 48 hours. What if that was the norm? What if we did that all the freaking time? And imagine the kind of elevation we would give. The spotlight is now on the people who need it. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then my wife and I try to be, as politically involved as we can. I mean, I do believe very much in local politics, making a difference. So we're very active, and we do a lot of donations, as far as within our means, to some of the most important states in the upcoming election. So we're trying to, we're in a Massachusetts bubble, so we're trying to like make sure our impact make sure our efforts have impact elsewhere. Shout out to Jamie Harrison, who's running against, Mitch McConnell, or not Mitch McConnell.
You're talking about Lindsey Graham?
Yeah, thank you. You could use $20 of your money. I'm gonna put his link in here. Is that inappropriate? Jamie Harrison for Senate.
Feel free to. Everybody has a right to research for themselves.
$20 right now, people. Right now, Jamie Harrison.
Yeah, I too am a fan of Jamie Harrison. I do hope that he prevails. And a lot of us here in South Carolina are ready for a change. So anyway, so we have like 5 minutes left, and I always love this last question because it's more of a free-for-all, and that is, what if I'm not asked you about that you wish to share with this audience? Or there's some other topics that you have a lot of energy and passion around that you want to share with us?
I'm very committed to also being very out. And the reason for that is I believe that when I was, young and looking up to people, I didn't see a lot of me in the room. I was at a lot of startups, a lot of male-dominated startups. I was already the only woman in the room. I was obviously the only gay in the room, and it was really, really disheartening to not see anybody like me. So that's all. Just if I can be a helpful beacon for somebody who like a group or a class or an organization, I'm more than happy to talk. I think it's important to, as see representation of yourself out in the world. And I'm very happy to be doing that. So that's more of like an ask to like put me to use as you think valuable. I'm very open about who I am and proud of it. And I think it's important that everyone that felt invisible, that now has a platform, is very willing to use that. It matters, and it matters more than we can never know. It matters to the person that will never actually tell us. I do hear from time to time, hey, I felt, seen because I saw you speak and you were so out. And that every time I hear that, I'm like, oh my God, like that's impact in the world. That's change that I think we all need to make. But it's like one person at a time. So if that's you, come on out. It's worth inspiring the younger you and the future yous.
I love that. Yeah, people want to feel seen, valued, and heard. I mean, those are our fundamentals, our fundamental needs. I often talk about belongingness and the fact that it's hard for anyone to show up at their best in any environment if they're always questioning whether or not they belong. Do I belong here? Am I valued? Do I have full opportunity for success? Do my contributions matter? And so feeling seen, valued, and heard, it may just sound like some, cliche words that are all put together, but it's so powerful. I shared with this audience a few Fridays ago when one of the most impactful things that's ever been said to me during this period where, again, so many people are now entering into this conversation about racial injustice and racial equity work, was a white male saying to me, Nika, I see you. And those words were like, oh my gosh. I mean, I literally was moved to tears. Just simply, I see you. And anyway, so this has been a beautiful hour because you have shared so much of yourself and your passion, your work, and then the resources. I have to say, you definitely go down in history with Intentional Conversations as being the host that has shared the most resources with us. And I love that. This community certainly always goes back, and we do share out the chat transcript. And so thank you for your time. And can you tell us when you anticipate that Book Watch is going to come out?
We're hoping, we're hoping very soon. I hate to say this, but I started working on this late last year, and then 2020 happened, and it really, to me, was like the year that we're going to look back to in history as the year of corporate performative wokeness, the co-opting of every major social movement by brands. I hate to say it, it was a great year to choose to do this. So very soon, and I will give one more shameless plug that what I'm doing to fund this, I'm completely doing it independently because I want ownership over the message. I'm funding it through speaking engagements. And I have a great presentation on the 7 risks of performative brand allyship. I talk to internal marketing teams, classrooms, employee resource groups about this topic. So please book me because your money will go right towards making the film, which hopefully will create some actual meaningful change. Nika, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Sure. No, absolutely. Thank you for accepting the invite. And I also want to shout out Natasha because, again, Natasha's on my team, DEI manager, and she's the one that connected the two of us. And so, Natasha, you hit a home run. I love this
It's
hour.
Natasha's fault.
No, I love this hour that we were able to spend together. And so you will receive this afternoon, again, a follow-up email that's going to have a link to the replay. Share it out. It'll have some other links that Katie has shared as well, including how you can get in touch with her, take her up on her offering. You've heard how intelligently she speaks on this topic and how passionately she speaks on this topic. And I think that certainly we're going to want to help her get this message out. And so I appreciate each of you for joining. I always say it makes me feel seen, valued, and heard to know that people are here protecting this window of time to be a part of this community. And so I hope to see you all back next week, where we will have Sean. And Sean Wanzo was actually a part of the discussion today. In fact, it was a couple of his questions that we were able to address. But look forward to having Sean as my guest co-host next week. And again, Katie, I just appreciate you. Thank you so very much. You all have a great weekend. Happy Friday to all.